Jerry Nappi at the Entergy nuclear power plant there, where he is the senior manager of nuclear communications. Welcome to the show, Jerry. Thanks for calling.
Yep, my pleasure.
Yeah. Now, are you located in Oswego yourself?
No, I'm actually located in a regional office in White Plains, New York, but I'm familiar with the FitzPatrick station and the people there.
Yeah, and those who may not know the situation there, Entergy, a company based in New Orleans, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
That's right.
And you're based in downstate New York. And as for the folks in Oswego, just basically what faces them over the course of the next year, and how did this decision come about to cease operations there at the end of 2016?
Sure. So, FitzPatrick is a nuclear power plant owned by Entergy. It's owned FitzPatrick since the year 2000. FitzPatrick is a very well-run, solid, performing power plant. The people run it well, very professionally. And the reason for the company's decision to shut down the plant is related solely to the economics of that facility. So, natural gas burning power plants are competitors to nuclear power plants. We've seen already low natural gas prices fall even further over the last year or so to historic lows. And those natural gas power plants essentially have lower costs now, and that's made us less competitive and driven down the revenues that our FitzPatrick plant receives by about $60 million each year, which make that plant no longer economically viable. So, our message, our president's message, who came up to the plant on Monday morning to meet with the people, was to really stress that this has nothing to do with the performance of the plant. Again, it's a very well-run plant, and people are very engaged at that facility. They're engaged internally in their job, and they're actually engaged outside in the community, volunteering thousands of hours each year. So it was a difficult message to deliver, but the company really had no alternative due to the economic situation.
And Jerry, will Entergy assist in relocating any of those employees to other facilities around the country within Entergy?
Yeah, and that was a main message that was delivered Monday morning, again, to the people at FitzPatrick. Entergy is a large company. They have other power plants across the country, and, the commitment was made to the people that if they choose to move, if they'd like to move, the company will make every effort to find them, a suitable position at another plant or at a corporate office. The company had to make a similar decision at a plant in Vermont a couple of years back, and it really, made every effort to find people employment at other facilities, and it pledged to do the same thing for the people at FitzPatrick.
So this could happen. This is happening across the board. It's really nothing to do specifically with New York and New York's business climate.
That's partly true. I mean, the main driver for the shutdown of FitzPatrick and the main driver for the shutdown of Entergy's Vermont plant are low natural gas prices. Mm-hmm. Historically, in recent years that we've seen, and the expectation that they're going to remain low for the foreseeable future. So that was that's the main driver. There's other issues in New York, for example. There's market design issues. New York's wholesale energy market is supposed to be it's set up to be a competitive, open, and fair market. What we've seen in some cases are special deals or outside of market contracts to some power plants, which enable them to operate at a lower cost and thereby undercut the revenues that other plants that don't receive those contracts can receive from the market. But again, the main driver are the low natural gas prices.
Right.
Just to get back to your first question, you asked about how long the plant will run, I believe, and what the near future holds. FitzPatrick's in the middle of an operating cycle, so nuclear plants run usually for 2-year cycles. They shut down, they put new fuel in the reactor, and they run for 2 years. So FitzPatrick will run for the next year, approximately 12 to 14 months, and at that time, or until that time, we will continue to have the full complement of employees who are there today to continue to operate that facility.
Is that 600? Is that right?
That's correct.
And with that, I'm seeing a report that this could keep some of the workforce employed for 10 to 20 years in the shutdown or cleanup effort of FitzPatrick. Is that true? And how much of the workforce will be retained?
Right. So, again, we're going to work over the next year and beyond to set employees up, those who we can, set them up for other positions within the company after the plant shuts down. And so after the plant shuts down, soon after that, the headcount at the facility will be reduced by about 50%. Mm-hmm. So there will be, a number of jobs still for people to do. And then at some point, down the road, 12 to 18 months, as a general rule of thumb, headcount would be reduced by about another 50%.
Talking to,
oh,
sorry.
Yep. Our job, HR's job is to work very hard over the next year, mm-hmm. 18 months to help those people out.
Thanks, Jerry. Talking to Jerry Nappi, Senior Manager for Nuclear Communications at Entergy. And we talked with our legal correspondent, Mark Walber, yesterday about the idea that Governor Cuomo may try and fight this in court. And this is what our legal correspondent said yesterday on our show.
An entity that supplies a service which is deemed necessary for life, there are regulations in terms of when they can curtail their operations. So there may be some issues related to that because it is deemed a necessity and there may be people relying on it where there is no good substitute, and that's the key.
That's our legal correspondent talking about the potential fight in court. Is Entergy prepared to fight in court? Are they aware of Governor Cuomo's statement with regard to that?
Yeah, so I think he's, referring to obviously the fact that we generate electricity, which is, potentially critical for reliability to keep the lights on, et cetera. It's our view that the Public Service Commission does not have the authority to direct a power plant to continue operations in a case such as this, where recent analyses by the group that operates the grid have confirmed that this plant is not required to address an identified reliability need. So, in other words, in the area where FitzPatrick is situated, there's more supply and more capacity than there is demand. So, it's been determined already that recently, actually, by the independent system operator, that FitzPatrick is not required to address that electricity demand.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So you don't see that if Governor Cuomo pursues what he called every legal and regulatory avenue, that this will be a factor or help retain the site?
Well, yeah. I mean, again, in our view, it's that the State Public Service Commission does not have the authority in this case to direct this plant to continue to operate.
And one thing that I stressed here is the idea of the natural gas being the subsidy here, but it's not as clean as an energy source as the plant. Is that true?
Well, not necessarily. Actually, no. Natural gas is a cleaner burning fuel than coal-fired power plants. Mm-hmm. But, nuclear power plants emit no greenhouse gas emissions,
right,
or air pollution at all while they're in operation. So nuclear has, an incredibly beneficial environmental footprint of no airborne emissions. Natural gas is, better than coal in terms of emissions, but it still does emit, some pollutants into the environment.
And Jerry, just maybe one quick last one. FitzPatrick, going online 1975. At this current time, 600 or so employees. Do you know what the employment rate was at that point, at 1975?
I do not know that. That's a great question. Entergy purchased this plant from the State Power Authority in 2000, along with a plant downstate, Indian Point Unit 3.
Right.
And I don't know what the head count was, prior to that or even back when it first started. But, nuclear power plants are labor intensive. There's a lot of testing of safety systems that's done by engineers and operators. The fuel is actually a low cost relative to the plant. So one of the nice things about nuclear plants is that they provide a lot of jobs for the local community compared to other power plants.
And you mentioned Indian Point facing the same fate as the one in Oswego here.
Well, Indian Point's a bit different. Indian Point has better economies of scale. It's a dual-unit power plant on one site where you can, achieve those economies of scale, and it's situated in a different power market where it receives revenues that enable it to be economically viable. So that plant, will continue to operate.
Jerry, thanks for joining us on such short notice. We appreciate that.
My pleasure.